crazy up here being on this stage so much. So, um, thank you all for sticking around as we get on with this panel, which is going to be an exciting one about festivals and venues. Hello. Hi. All right. Well, what's that? Yeah. 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 Hang on for a second. Okay, great. And welcome. Welcome, Corey. All right. So if we could do quick introductions here. And I just want to say that Kevin Sturr, who runs Artist Home in Seattle and produces a number of festivals there, had hoped to join us. He has a sick kid. He stayed home. And so welcome, Corey. Welcome, Terry, to this panel. And if you would all just introduce yourself. You all have such diverse and different experience. If you would introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do. And Terry, would you like to start?
Hey, it's on. Hi, my name is Terry Morgan. I'm a bass player by heart, impresario, producer by trade, and cultural pioneer by dreaming. I have been a musician since I was 13 and went to school at the University of Washington, took a degree in African American Studies, did my work in history of jazz and ethnomusicology, was a TA at the university in the music department, did my master's work in systematic musicology, which was a scientific approach to music. I was into physiological response and expectation, which led me to become a punk rock promoter. Because school was a dead end, I tell you. So we started the Showbox Theater, myself and 3 other guys, in 1979, and did all the early new wave punk rock shows that were coming in from England. We worked a lot with Ian Copeland with FBI out of New York. So we were the pipeline directly from London to Vancouver to Seattle, and had the fortunate pleasure to work with everybody from the Police, Devo, XTC, Gang of Four, Squeeze, PIL, Iggy Pop, Ramones, Plasmatics, and it just goes on and on of a legendary time of music. But I now play bass with a guy named Leroy Bell, who's an excellent singer-songwriter, and produce concerts at University Village, Volunteer Park, and I'm the manager of arts and culture at Carnation Farms, which is going to be a new arts and culture destination in King County. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Deb.
Hi, I'm Deb Mayer. I'm the executive director of the WOW Hall. This is a very tough act to follow. I come as a blank slate. I come with no agenda. My background is community and economic development, and I have had a lot of time doing nonprofit, public-private partnerships and creating new ideas. I've never run a venue before, ever. What I bring to it is an expertise in nonprofit management, board governance, training, project management, infrastructure, and a great appreciation for musicians. And don't even ask me how to run a soundboard. I'm really happy to be here. I'm in sponge mode. I'm learning from you all. I love being at the WOW Hall. And I'm here to learn and be a support to our local community in Eugene.
Fantastic. Thanks, Deb. Reese.
Hi, Reese Tanimura, she, they pronouns, and I am with Northwest Folklife in Seattle, Washington. I actually come from a music education background and taught in the public schools for over a decade, both in Hawaii and in Washington. And I also worked in social services, particularly in education, for an organization called Youth Care in Seattle, and did workforce development in that stint, which kind of pertains to some of the programming that brought to Folklife. When I talk about Folklife, our flagship and oldest program, how the organization started, is a turning 53-year-old Folklife festival. It started in 1972, actually by an initiative of the National Parks Service, I believe, was the branch of the government that was seeding folk festivals across the country in the 70s. We are one of the only, I think there's 2 festivals left from that initial cadre of like 16 or so that they started, it might have been more than that, that exists to this day. And we're the only one that exists in the exact same spot in pretty much the same format. Obviously, over the course of time, we've changed quite a bit. So that program, we became a nonprofit in '84 and have seeded. We work with Seattle Public Schools. In 2020, amidst the pandemic, we launched a cultural and creative workforce development program where 20 to 30 young people a year have now gone through this program, paid internships, not just at our organization, but at several partner organizations, to do everything from dance to work with like the Film Forum and media and journalism and individual artists. So it's, I would say, as much it's an apprenticeship program and a mentorship program as an internship program, because that's a very loaded word. And then we do a whole cadre of year-round community programming. And I guess I'll just stop there.
Is that all you got, Reese?
And then maybe some things will come out along the way.
Excellent.
I'm Corey Hazel. I am an artist manager, and I'm also a music industry professional in Denver, Colorado. I have worked from like the publishing editorial space for 5 years as the editor of 303 magazine, writing on basically the come up of Denver's music scene for 5 years, focusing on artists, focusing on the economic development of like the music scene, and then transitioning into like an artist manager from my love of like really trying to raise up Denver's music scene to be on the national forefront. In addition, I work with music festivals with AG, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we have obviously a diverse array of experience up here. We all know that when the pandemic hit, we all heard about venues because venues got organized and got loud. But festivals were also really radically impacted. They were not allowed to do business at all. So it was a year and a half before any festivals got back to going. And I have to say that I just want to mention Terry Morgan won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Washington Festival and Events Association during that time. Yes, incredibly well deserved. But so what's working now? What are you seeing as festivals and venues are coming back? What are you seeing in your spaces? And maybe we should start with you, Corey, this time instead of starting at the other end. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. I think festivals are in an interesting place in terms of like, a lot of my perspective also comes from like getting artists out to these festivals and like how we build something sustainable through our artists playing festivals and like growing nationally. I think, first of all, festivals have like a bunch of rising costs, and it also impacts like, okay, how can we like give this to the public in the same way we've traditionally done it with these rising costs and this after effects of the pandemic, while also a bunch of artists are also being like, this rate that used to go for me isn't gonna like be the exact, isn't gonna like go as far as it used to. And that includes like getting out there, how you lodge, and also like how you fill your time around the festival. So I think like you're seeing kind of like a shift of like how festivals are like changing their base dynamics of how they actually work all together. And you're also seeing some shrinkage in the industry of like which ones are lasting and able to adapt to those changes. And for the artists, it's like you're also seeing like, to a degree, less of the same opportunity that used to be there with like the shrinkage and the changes and like being more tighter on the budgets. So it's an interesting time.
How about you, Reese? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'll start with this base layer. First of all, I don't know, some people have kind of asked Folklife, what is that, a folk festival? I think one thing to understand about our festival is a representation of folk, which are people, and the state that they are in at any given time. So some of our youngest performers are 2 years old in our dance, our hula hulaus, and our folklorical groups, all the way up to folks who are in their 90s who've been doing like masters of oud and of traditional arts, and also some of them who have excelled at evolving their art forms, and all the while giving honor to tradition, to the knowledge that is being passed intergenerationally. Our festival was started, we do a little differently. We have programmers. We don't book. We have an application system. We actually had a database system built out for us, so you can talk a little bit about the infrastructure later. But we had 1,100 applicants over a 2-month period as we go into this next 24 festival. In the prevailing 51 years before 2023, our performers were all volunteers. They donated their time. That was understood from the outset. The festival was largely run for many, many years with like 500 to 600 volunteers a year. I think this is not uncommon, probably not too like surprising of news, especially if you played folk festivals, right? And in 2023, I think what the pandemic did was it helped us push a conversation. For my co-director, who is a working musician, I myself, come from that background, more on the education side, but understanding being in the working musician field, like we have to figure out how to compensate our performers somehow. Every other worker on the grounds, our stage crews, folks that handle even some of our like entrance boxes, they're paid, and to ask our artists to continuously take that brunt of like how we operate a $3 million festival, which I will say a large part of it is in kind and partnership from the city, it's still like, it's imbalanced, it's inequitable. So with help from the Office of Economic Development, we piloted or pushed off our performance compensation. And we're not a booking festival, so it's like, I think our base rate was for a solo performer was about $100 for groups. Some of them are large groups, dance groups. I think their cap was $500. We also have a little bit of transportation or travel assistance for folks coming further. So the pandemic, because of the way that the inequity was magnified, actually helped us to move, sort of the board and some of our constituencies that were having a hard time, that we've just really bought into this as we're giving back to the community and this should always be volunteer, was able to help move the dial on just understanding that we also received feedback from working musicians and working artists that sometimes they would like to perform at our festival, but the choice was they couldn't because they had to make sure that every time they went out to do a thing that they got some kind of compensation or they could cover their costs, right? So those are things that I think in the new world, obviously cost is a factor. But if we can continue that kind of conversation and make those kinds of gains for providing more artist support, providing more resources to accompany that as far as values. We also did digital festivals in 2020. We're the first large festival to go digital because lockdown was in March, our festival was in May. It was 8 weeks, they told us, lockdown. We came out of that, we were like, our 3 doctors on our board said, no way, 8 weeks, we have to make a call. And so we went with a 6-channel digital festival, totally analog organization, went digital in a very short amount of time. And then since that, we've continued. So we stream one of the stages. We do a lot of recording. We do pre-recordings. We stream alongside. We put a film festival up online in addition to the live film festival that's at the festival. And so some of these things that we were pushed to do and think differently about how to continue to present the wonderful art and community and the humans behind all of that. And during the pandemic, we have been able to push forward and move into sort of a new status. And then some things are, Some things are still the same. We have a hall full of dancers that line up at 10 a.m. on Friday, ready to contra dance their little utility-kilts off. So it's a nice mix of old and new, and I think the challenges are. I don't think the challenges are really that surprising, right? Labor, supplies, all of those things constricted and more expensive. And I think just the challenge to us is how to continue to uplift artists, their humanity, their art in that condition.
Thank you, Reese. Deb, you run a different kind of an organization. You run an all-ages space in Eugene. Can you tell us a little bit about the WOW Hall?
Sure, thanks so much. Yes, it's an all-ages venue, and I've been hearing a common theme repeated throughout this time, and that is we're all trying to figure out what the puzzle pieces are to keep this working. And we're all looking for ways to be sustainable. What I find interesting in the nonprofit sector is that there are a lot of different income streams that are not otherwise available to the for-profit sector. So as a nonprofit, we can get grants. We're a membership organization, which, by the way, makes us pretty unique. Our board is elected by our members, and it is a membership-owned organization that owns a historic building in Eugene. So here's the deal. This building was built in 1932 for $8,000 with a hardwood dance floor. It's one of 3 floating dance floors in Oregon. Crystal Ballroom is another one. And so in 1932, we had visionary leaders at a time of depression. So here we are again. The times are calling for more visionary leadership. And so if these guys stepped out, that's our legacy. So we're carrying on with this new legacy. And as an all-ages volunteer organization, we really celebrate youth. We have our beer garden downstairs, and upstairs are where young people come. We just had a band last week. They were singing the Kermit the Frog song about the rainbow. And all the kids were in front, and they were part of that. So we nurture volunteers, and what's interesting is those volunteers become board members, and some of the board members go on in the music industry. And on our board now are people who are experts in digital marketing and are now enhancing the skill level of our staff so that we're now doing social media in a whole new way, reaching previous ticket buyers, doing market segmentation, and reaching out through social media in ways that we never did before. We also have a brand new Dynamite website. We have a strategic framework. We have an aligned board with no drama. We have staff with high morale. And yes, we're still trying to figure out how to meet the gap between earned income and contributed income. And grant makers seem to like the fact that we are in the process of getting over the growth hump so that we can become a more sustainable organization. Most importantly, we are a community cultural anchor. And at the WOW Hall, we have hired a community voices coordinator. We have had a queer review and drag show, a pride dance. We do Latin dance. We do, these are for the community. And we have had an all-African sound celebration and dance ability. And a couple weeks ago, we had Cuban salsa dancing. We do community gatherings. We can rent the hall out for weddings, for memorial services and community gatherings. We also had COVID vaccinations with the governor coming to the WOW Hall. So we are this known icon in Eugene, and we want to build on that history, but expand out to do even more in the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Deb. Hey, Jerry, you had produced a new festival in Seattle right before the pandemic hit. I believe it might have been the first in the country of its kind.
Well, the first in the Pacific Northwest.
First in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, we had not seen that before,
No.
but you had pulled that off, and then I think you had visions of doing it annually, right?
It was a vision, yes. I got interested in analog imagery back in the 1970s. I studied with Bill Ritchie in the art department at the University of Washington, mostly working in abstract electronic art. I had a friend who went to school at Cal Arts and studied with Namjoon Paik, who's a legendary video artist. And part of their project was to build a video synthesizer, which was basically a 7-channel colorizer, taking black and white images into it and mixing them into the strangest things you ever saw on TV. So I had a fusion jazz band, and we started building these images along with the music that we produced. And I got pretty good at it. Showed at a couple of galleries in Seattle, but I was challenged and thought, well, this stuff should be seen. So I sent it off to WGBH in Boston, and they liked it and aired it, and KQED in San Francisco aired it. But that was kind of all pre-MTV, and nobody understood what this stuff was all about. So I continued on in my punk rock adventures. But it was always in my mind that this kind of stuff was going to eventually break open. Jump to the 2000s, and the concept of projection mapping it started taking a good grasp in my head as far as this is really cool stuff. And I don't know if you guys know what projection mapping is, but you create these super large images that you project on buildings and basically turn them into augmented reality in real time. So I started researching and discovered these guys out of Budapest, Hungary, called Max Intensity, and they were coming to the States to do a project at the University of Michigan for the 100-year anniversary at Ann Arbor. And so we met up, and boy, if I ever had a brother, it was Tomas Vespori, because we just spoke the same language. And so we decided, sitting in a bar in Seattle, let's do a festival. So we put on, well, it took us 3 years to raise the money, for one thing. Nobody had ever heard of a light festival. And we pulled this off in South Lake Union. Tell me if I'm talking too long. In South Lake Union, at the South Lake Union Park, right in front of the Museum of History and Industry. And we got media partners with Como TV, Comcast came on board, Audi, Amazon, and the city of Seattle. So we were still underfunded, but we said, hey, we're going to go for it. You know, if we take a hit, we take a hit, but we're going to make this thing happen. We put tickets on sale. Actually, they were available for free tickets. And people had to register a day and a time to come because we didn't want 20,000 people all coming at one time. This thing started taking off. And by the Thursday when we started doing tech rehearsals, the media came, and we were up to about 70,000 advance tickets. After the media hit, it was going way crazy at a rate of about 10,000 tickets an hour. And so we had to cut the tickets off and just say, anybody that shows up just shows up, but we're not responsible for bringing anybody else into the site. We ended up having over 120,000 people show up for the festival. We had artists from 7 countries all around the world. We went on to speak at the Fête de Lumière, which is a big lighting festival in Lyon, France. We received lots of accolades from all over the world, and Tomas continues to travel all the time, but I've been invited to the IMAP festival in Budapest and back to Fête de Lumière, and there's a few festivals here in Seattle. But we had hoped that, not Seattle, in the States, we had hoped that we could continue this on, but COVID hit, and raising $500,000 as startup, which is just the base level, just became kind of impossible. But it was not put off by that, and we had the opportunity in 2000, during pandemic, to create a project for the Space Needle, which had traditionally done a fireworks show at the Seattle Center. And so I proposed to them, let us create a digital show, and we will pull this off kind of Orson Welles style, and nobody will know what it is until it actually happens. And it aired as a live event, looked great, had the highest ratings of any New Year's show that the King TV had ever had. The YouTube's up to about 1.3 million, but the crazy thing was that the digital impressions was over 3 billion impressions, and the marketing value that the Space Needle put on it was over $100 million for an 11-minute digital piece that nobody thought would become anything. So we continue to move into new adventures and new dimensions, but it's all based upon, you know, the same skills and ideas I had as a punk rock promoter. And, you know, one thing I encourage you all to do as producers, don't just get stuck in one vein. Use your skills in as many different administrative worlds as you can. I produced a chalk festival, now out at Carnation Farms, in this It's a beautiful 818-acre site that we're turning into a cultural destination. I'm just trying to apply what I know into what will entertain people and give opportunities to new artists.
Thank you, Terry. I might have missed it, but I don't think you mentioned the name of your light festival.
Oh, the festival's called Borealis.
And in 2020, when you did that Space Needle thing, it was because we didn't want crowds to gather at the
Right.
Space Needle. So the augmented reality could only be seen on TV.
On television.
If you were standing under the Space Needle, you weren't going to see it. So it was a way to engage the crowd without them being physically present,
Right.
right?
People were looking out their windows thinking that they were going to see something, but they couldn't see a thing.
Yeah. All right. So, what is the opportunity for all of you as festival producers and a venue owner to be engaging the next generation, community youth development organizations? You spoke a bit to that, Reese, but that's it. We heard Daniel Pock and others up here talking about what they're doing. Deb does that as well. You do that, Reese. What is the opportunity there? And is there anything we're missing that we should be acting on right now with community youth development organizations?
Yeah, I mean, one, supporting the existing youth organizations to grow and develop, like supporting a Totem Star or a Vera project or a Rhapsody project to do what they are doing now and expand and grow larger, have their young people who are growing into young workforce, like have them do the work of helping them step into those spaces. Because I think a lot of times what happens is like, we're like, well, I have a good idea and we're gonna enact it. And there's like 15 organizations or even like 3 organizations that are doing that work, right? So when we talked earlier about collaborativity and making sure that we're doing things together, part of that is not doubling up on things and getting, sort of like trying to create competition in a way that is like squeezing folks who do this work and have been doing it for a long time out. With that end, when we created the workforce program, we do that in partnership with the Office of Arts and Culture and the Office of Economic Development. And I think that's really important. As to one of the previous discussions, is that we hold the city accountable for the kinds of programs it already has. It has workforce summer internships, it has money with the ports, it has money with trades. It is really important to hold them accountable that our industries and our ecosystem is an economic driver, it is a community building driver. We need to make sure that we have access to funding to make sure our workforce is developed in the same way. And so from our standpoint at Folklife, like we partner with a lot of amazing people who have an excellent depth of knowledge, particularly our communities, our Black and brown communities that have an excellent depth of knowledge of navigating systems that, as we said before, were not built for them or in some cases built to work against them. So in order to support that capacity, we work with smaller businesses, smaller groups that are grassroots organizing groups, nonprofits that are specifically really reaching young folks that, one, may not understand that these opportunities are available in our sector, two, may not have, the time to do a volunteer thing that just to learn about something, three, that have a lot of interest in sort of a creative development or even community development and really want to be in community. And so working with those folks, I'll give you an example. We work with a group called On the Block and Blue Cone Studios on 11th Avenue in Capitol Hill. 11th Avenue in Capitol Hill was one of the main streets where you saw on Fox News the guy with the military rifle standing that was superimposed on all the pictures. It was the CHOP, the Chaz, the war zone that everybody imagined to be this horrible place that was like all whatever. I mean, it was just a really horrible representation of a lot of community coming together to do mutual aid, to talk about race and how that there's lots of disproportional and very traumatic violence happening to Black communities, and those artists were in the center of it. There's a Vermilion is a cafe, Blue Cone Studios. There are a couple studios and artists across the street, and they have been doing cultural work a long time around that. And so in order to just support the work that we were doing further during that time, but obviously with the values of making sure community is centered, making sure that these artist organizers have the young people that they're mentoring, that they're getting paid. Some of our internships are not like open to all. Some of them are like, this young person has been showing up for 6 months to help us lug, paints up and down to do these murals. They're helping us create the murals. They're doing that because they want to contribute. They don't know how to make this into a thing. They see us and they kind of want that help and mentorship, and they're doing it in their spare time. And so we can offer 15 hours a week or 20 hours a week where they're actually doing that as their work, right? And they're already doing it. So I think these are the things, like when I think about workforce development, is like, there's people out there doing the work already. We need to create the resources for them to be paid to do that work, and then develop those skills into a place where they're in a position to help us evolve and change the industry that exists. The one thing that I will correct Jimmy a little bit in the rant that I had about, the system's not broken. The system wasn't built for us. The system is working. Actually, it's not broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work, which is not to benefit artists, Black and brown folks, LGBTQ, right? Like, we're working in systems that were actively designed to keep us out, and as creatives in multiple ways. Maybe through our identity and through the intersections of the work that we do, or the creative spaces that we hold. And so I think to understand that base layer of, if that's what exists as a system, we really need to talk about more than fixing. We really need to talk about new, not just reimagined, like literally, like we need to talk about things that are in place of, alternatives to. Some things can be fixed. There are things that are great that are out there, but we also need to really be talking about what we need to let go of, what we need to let die, move on from. And I think that by building a workforce of young people who are excited to see a new future, that's a big part of it.
Heck yeah, Reese. All right, who wants to follow that?
Well, I could say a couple
Go right
things.
ahead.
So I get it, the importance of involving youth. I think your point was well taken about not reinventing the wheel. So the WOW Hall, for example, serves as this community anchor, as I mentioned earlier. One of the groups that we're working with is a group called Music's Edge, and every summer they do rock camp, where kids from ages about 10 to 17 learn how to do a rock thing. And so for a whole week, we have 6 different bands set up all over the WOW Hall. And you walk in the door and like you can't work at all. It takes over everything. And then on Friday night, they do a performance. Each one comes on stage and everybody cheers them. And it leads then to them having a stronger interest in music, collaboration, leadership, engagement, and they oftentimes become volunteers at the WOW Hall. That's just one track. But the other thing that we're also doing is reaching out to tell a better story. Just quickly, we've formed a partnership with KEZI, which is the ABC channel for Eugene, and their team is going to actually produce a 30-second blurb about the WOW Hall and our history, which will be sponsored by a local corporation and would be shown 60 times each month for 3 months. And it begins to create a different brand of the WOW Hall. We're also members of the Eugene Chamber, the Springfield Chamber, and Travel Lane County, and we're very much involved with tourism. So it's the whole idea of us reaching out rather than people trying to rediscover the WOW Hall. We're working to become more integrated in the community as a place to be held up where anybody can come. They feel welcome, they feel safe. We're a place of love.
Very cool. Terry?
I was just going to add that I always try to do a majority of free events if I can get the sponsorship, because I was inspired because I went to a free concert in Seward Park featuring Charles Lloyd with an amazing band of Jack DeJohnette, Cecil McBee on bass, and Keith Jarrett on keyboards. And that just turned me on to like, wow, what else is out there? And so I wanted to get into outdoor programming. And so I put on my first festival when I was a sophomore in high school. kind of crazy, you know. It just took a big chance, lost a shitload of money, and moved on to go to college. But, you know, unless you get that exposure, you never know what you can possibly do. And the jobs aren't necessarily on the stage. The jobs are in the sound booth, in the lighting booth, in the promotion world. If you really want to be secure in the industry, become a tradesman. And still play music. Still always keep music as the forefront, but get your skills built up so that you can have a career and build up some retirement funds.
Thank you, Terry. We're winding down on the time here. So, Corey, you want to take us home? Great.
On the same topic.
Or whatever you'd like. This is your 2 minutes.
Oh, wow. To kind of bounce off, I'll bounce off that last point about finding the trades in music as well. I think a lot of youth in general just don't have the same knowledge of like a lot of how much goes on in the background of this industry. And I think it's like at a loss because like so much of the industry is like, it isn't filled in those positions by enough young people. I don't think a lot of people have had that same access to like knowing like, oh, how to be behind the sound booth, how to really like bring that skill set to the table off the stage. And I think we could just honestly just do more in terms of like getting people to see the value of those positions across the whole industry, outside of just festivals, but like the entire, like the venue system, everything.
Can I just finish up to say that, you know, talking about youth development, infrastructure, I think just capitalizing on the opportunity anytime you can find a partner or a space in your operations to like have somebody even shadow, or if you can pay them to come in and help and do just running around things. I know we have a lot of young people who just are like, I just want to see a thing and do a thing for a little while, and I want to do a lot of different things. Some of them don't want to be stuck behind a desk, right? They don't want to be in a factory, like a 40-hour week. They want to experience a little this and a little that, and just trying to find all the places in your spaces, whether they're organized or whether they're like grassroots kind of things, to make that opportunity, I think is a big thing about us getting folks to believe that there is a future for them in our sector. And to really finish that off, I just want to also say that I'm going to announce here that on the Friday of Northwest Folklife Festival this May, I think it's the 23rd, 24th, something like that. It's a Memorial Day weekend in May. We're going to launch Creative Ecosystem Summit, because that's what it's all about, just like here. It's about the ecosystem, it's about the venues, it's about the artists, it's about developing our communities to have a reflex, to value what we do. And so we are going to be running, along with the launch of our festival, we're going to be running this Ecosystems Summit to talk about more development on the ground skills. And so please take a look at our website. It'll be upcoming in January to talk more about that, to continue these conversations, because they're really important conversations.
Thanks, Reese. So everyone come to Seattle in May for the Creative Ecosystem Summit and Northwest Folklife, which is free every year. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you to these panelists. Thank you.